tuning in to the online broadcast network, AfterBuzz TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing after-shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows. Interviewing celebrities and showrunners. And bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Here it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said
This
before.
is great. I want to build a Spotify playlist around this song. You
Oh
know?
my gosh, I wonder. The
Show me
Discover
similar.
Weekly.
Just all old, creepy German folk music. And
It doesn't get less creepy the longer it plays either.
no,
it gets creepier.
it's the same static, like monastic creepy all the way across the board.
Well, then let's just get started. Hi,
sounds
everybody. I am your host, Courtney Henderson. We are here for another episode of Man in the High Castle. We are here to do episode 4, Revelations. And as always, I have two very handsome co-hosts.
Why, thank you.
Uh-huh.
She called us lovely last time.
I did.
Which was
I missed
hugely
that.
flattering.
Am I
Well,
lovely
you're,
as also?
No, you're handsome. See?
But you got
But
both.
I got lovely.
Yeah,
I got
I'm
lovely, and then
just
she corrected
handsome.
the
That's
handsome.
fine.
Who are you guys?
I'll be vapid. That's fine. My name is Keith W. Black. You can find me all over the internet at Keith W. Black.
And my name is Taylor Bolt. You can find me on Twitter at Taybolt, that's Tayboldt, or on Instagram at Tbolt, also Boldt.
Thank you.
T-Bolt sounds like a superhero.
Right?
T-Bolt.
It really does.
I think it started as like a username way back in like AIM days or something like that. I was like, this
It
is
happens.
cool. And then now it's just
Mine,
kinda
it
stuck
was
that way.
embarrassing, so I switched.
Wait, what was
Yeah.
it? What was it? You have to
It
share
was
now.
Music Diva 9.
Diva.
And
I
it was
get the
Diva, it was EEVA.
That's how you know it's real diva.
Yeah,
It's
because
true diva.
Well, because it was like, if you just spell it diva, that's like so.
Well, that's
what do they
cliche.
call it today?
Yeah.
Basic.
Right. Okay.
So
Speaking of
basic.
divas, I think that Juliana in this episode was a little bit of a diva.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little
say
dramatic.
The
that.
thing I have to say first off, and I really wanted to say it last week because I had already watched episode 4.
Yeah, we had some trouble last week. We had both seen episode 4, and we were here with Zach, who had not seen it. And so I was trying not to spoil stuff for Zach, and in turn,
Or the
not-
watchers,
yeah, for
'cause-
any of you all
yeah.
out there.
Although from some of the comments I've seen from our viewers, they've seen all of it and they just
Okay,
want more of
good.
us.
That's
so.
true.
Okay. We're just trying to catch
So
up. Yeah.
yes. So, but I really liked how episode 4 literally picked up exactly where episode 3 left.
Oh, like
Yeah.
the moment
I mean,
after.
yes. I mean, it could have just been one continuous scene.
Yeah.
Like with a
Yeah,
commercial
like the
break or
rollover.
something.
Yeah.
I really liked that. I'm definitely not a fan of like the previously on type
Yeah.
crap. So for me,
Sure.
it was
To
just
be
like,
continued.
right? Well, I mean, it's like we know exactly what's going on, and it just got us right back into the action, just instantly hooked again. Like the intensity just took you right back there,
Well, that's
Yeah.
the
which
awesome
I
thing
liked.
about like an effective cliffhanger is you don't need a segue. You don't need to
Right.
get people back into it. You just play Edelweiss one more time and then pick up right where you left off.
Yeah.
They probably shot it in the same day too, or the same at least.
And I
Period
mean,
days. There we go.
and it speaks accolades to the show in itself and the storytelling abilities of it. If you can choose a scene and halfway through that scene, pause it down, and you're gonna want more. You're gonna come back. Like in the next week, just pick it right up. Like they're not gonna have to build. They're not gonna have to produce previously on. They're not gonna have to re-hype it up where you're coming into a new scene. Like, oh, let's get back.
Yeah.
Let's leave them wanting more for 5 minutes in the episode. We'll get back to that scene. They
Right.
they know it's good enough where if we stop down right now, the binge watching fan is just gonna be like, yeah, next, all right, let's
Well,
do
that's
this.
the thing. Yeah, it's like it's a part of the binge watching environment where you don't necessarily need the previously on.
Right.
And next episode, like the little
mean,
flash
and,
forward deal.
We're still only in episode 4, so of course there's not really a need for previously on yet. I mean, a lot of shows don't start doing that until they're several seasons
Yeah.
in, but
Sure.
I just, even still, a lot of shows still give you, they'll take it back 30 seconds, or like they'll replay the end scene.
Yeah.
And I like that they didn't do that. They just kind of picked up where they left off.
Yeah, it was well done. I thought it was
and
very
got
well
us
done.
got us in there. So yeah, so that was kind of my first thing.
And we find Juliana in a rather shall we say tense situation immediately.
Yes.
She is just trying to escape the marshal, and Joe is having a little bit of trouble finding her, ends up finding her. my biggest thing here was like I sort of knew when the scene started, like, okay, they're not gonna die. Like Juliana's not gonna die here. Like Joe's not gonna die here. And I think that there are reasons for this that make themselves known a little bit later on. Perhaps, maybe you could argue for them at least. But why didn't they kill the marshal when Joe knocked him out?
Yeah,
like first of all, he knocked him out. He knocked him out. He hit him in the back of the head, and it apparently was enough to make him go unconscious, but not enough to actually do any like brain trauma.
He's a perfect hitter.
Yeah, it was just the exact. I guess maybe he's trained in baseball bats or something, but he hits him exactly the right way, and then doesn't finish the job. They still are like trying to run away. So what? I don't know. I'm speculating. Why? Is there a reason that he needs to stay alive, or was this just sort of like that horror filmy like oversight where you incapacitate the villain but then don't do anything about it, even though there's a perfectly good shotgun sitting right there on the floor?
I think it's because they want to keep their option open for him to be in the show longer.
Yeah, from a production standpoint.
And you know, and coming from a production and acting background, I hate having to just use the excuse, look, well, it's a movie or it's a TV show, you know, like, it's just the way that it is because it's not real life, but you know, because it is meant to emulate real life, but that's the only thing I can think, and I say that because in the episode we don't see a lot of the marshal beyond that. It kind of like moves on, you know, and so I can only think that it gives us no reason to think that he's going to be in the next episode or the next episode, like. But episode 3 made it very clear that in episode 4 he would be there. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I feel like maybe it was a recurring role. Maybe his part is done, but they want the option of being able to bring him back.
I have a feeling he's going to come back, or they would have killed him. But for me, it's just I get the from the production standpoint of like, okay, we don't want to kill off this character right now. Totally respectable. I totally get that. It's then how do you find, and there might be something that's just revealed later. I think that there's a good opportunity for something. Yes.
From a from a story standpoint, the only thing I could think, because you know with Joe, of course, we're trying to figure out like what side he's really on right now, because we know the side he came from, and so if the marshal is also Nazi related.
Yes.
You know, Joe knows that. It's one, or knows he might be.
Right.
And therefore, it's kind of like I need to protect myself or us and be safe. But he's still kind of potentially one of us.
Right.
I think that he indiscriminately, rules in that realm out there that he's kind of going about as well. I don't think that he would really have that weight behind him had he not had knowing the backing of the Nazi party behind him, because that's what gives him his luster.
Yeah, well, we've already learned that he was somehow connected to that SD agent that they killed on the bridge.
Yeah.
So we know that he has some affiliation with at least a Nazi agent in that capacity, and then Joe tries to get him to back off of Juliana essentially by pulling the Nazi spy, the Nazi agent status. So I mean, I think assumes for sure that that's going to work for whatever reason, whether that's like his clout as being a Nazi agent, or like, hey, we're on the same team, don't mess with my target, you know. But either way, it is interesting when you look at it as like a tactical choice by Joe. Because my first thing as a viewer is that same, like, when you watch like a slasher, you're just like, they're down, kill him now, like it's your one shot. Like,
I mean, maybe he thought he was dead. I mean that's kind of a naive, but I'm just saying.
I feel if you're gonna shoot that scene and he's gonna come up and do the typical hitting somebody back in the head with a 2x4. And they're not going to actually do the pause moment. We're going to give that close-up shot of Joe standing looking at the body, because that would be an accomplishment for them. They've been pursued by this person. That would have been a feat that they had overcome, a danger they'd overcome. But they kind of just moved past it. So
and they acted like they still had to hurry, and he was really the only thing pressing them to hurry, from what we could gather. So it was like, okay, let's get out of here before he comes to, is sort of how it felt. But so maybe for Joe, that explains why he wouldn't want to actually like deliver the final blow. But why wouldn't Juliana at least be like, hey, can we,
there's like an adrenaline and a shock. I mean, and I think survival mode is also kind of like, we have a chance to get away. If I try to hit him, if I stick around, he could come back, he could regain consciousness. There's so many uncertainties of staying. I mean, and it's one of those where, I don't know, you also have to be, a murderer willing to be a murderer. And not to say that their lives aren't in danger and that it wouldn't be self-defense and that almost any one of us, because of human nature and survival mode, wouldn't try to kill,
Right.
or if put in the situation to save your
objectively.
own life, you have to kill.
Yeah.
But it's all easier said than done, I think.
Sure,
is what I'm getting at.
I can accept that. Like, they just wouldn't want to just take a human life, sort of thing. Because
Yeah.
there is sort of this righteous nobility, especially to Juliana's character. Joe's, we've seen him kill before, sort of indiscriminately. I mean, the very first episode, one of the first things he does is kill a Nazi, just because, to endear himself, I guess, to the people that are about to be captured. It didn't really seem like there was a huge point other than that he wanted to get away.
And I think also trying to prove his story,
Right.
his backstory, and like, oh, I wouldn't kill a Nazi agent if I was a Nazi, but you have to remember the Nazis. Look at them pawns.
I'm looking back at that scene, and to me, it's like the resistance guys that he's with. He
Are you talking about in episode 1?
Episode 1.
Okay.
Like, just to harken back to that really quick. The resistance guys that he's like just met up with, who he's taking, the truck and they're for the film.
I'm not just a punk.
Yeah. He at that point he knows the Nazis are going to take them all. He doesn't.
Do you think he does know that? Because that was my thought that just came to mind.
I think
he
I
knows.
think he's got to. I think he. I mean. Yeah, because I mean that guy fell directly into Obergruppenführer. I could say it last week.
Yeah.
Obergruppenführer's hands. So I think that was definitely part of the same operation.
But we also hear Mr. OBF. That's what I'm going to call him.
John Smith.
Yeah, John Smith. We also hear the Fuhrer talk about how everybody's kind of got their own. What's the word I'm looking, like, missions, or kind of like they're
their own
only
parts.
this is not something that they like all sit down and have like a staff meeting about, and everybody knows everybody's role. It's like
you're talking
you
about,
do what you're told, it's on a need to know basis.
Right. You're talking about in reference to the agent that they killed on the bridge. Yeah, but he's a different department, is what I
No,
gather.
I
He's an
mean
SD
when they
agent.
went in episode 1 and like shot up the whole place he just got the keys from to go drive the truck away.
Right.
Did he know they were coming in after?
Yeah.
You think so?
I
Okay.
feel like he had to, because Obergruppenführer sent him, and Obergruppenführer presumably sent the others because he had direct jurisdiction over the prisoners. Like, when they captured the resistance leader, it went right back to Obergruppenführer, and he's the one who orchestrated getting Joe in there, right? So I think that he definitely orchestrated that.
It
whole
was
thing.
one mission.
Right,
Yeah.
that was one
Okay.
mission. But
I just wondered your
let's get the
opinions
film.
on that.
I
Well,
feel
let's go
that
back
that's
to
the
episode
case.
4 since we're talking
Sure.
about murder,
Well,
and
what I wanted to say in regards to that is Joe decides to kill a Nazi, right? He decides to kill a Nazi when he doesn't necessarily have to. Like, there's not necessarily a reason that he needs to, but he decides
but there
to kill
might
that
be.
Nazi.
I mean, because how many people in the how many people know that Joe is Joe and that he wasn't part of the resistance?
You mean like who he is as a person,
Okay.
separate?
Yeah,
the
I'm
Nazi
saying,
Party
like,
and
do
Joe?
the Nazis know who Joe is?
I don't
Or
think
if
the
they see
regular.
him-
I don't think a day-to-day.
Exactly. So he may have just been
enlisted man does.
defending himself.
That's quite possible.
But it
I
doesn't
just-
matter. We
I
got to
just-
go back to episode 4.
I just feel like there's something that we're starting to see seed into Joe's character that was sort of maybe foreshadowed at there, where there is sort of this underladen desire to kill Nazis. Like, maybe like he's not.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Even deeper than what we're learning from
Before
him
he
about being a
realized
Nazi
it.
agent. Yeah,
It was like in his
he's
subconscious.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or before he
I'll buy
realizes
that.
it, or maybe before he's revealing it. Maybe we still don't know it yet as the viewers.
Right.
But he's actually that he didn't necessarily have to kill that Nazi, but he wanted to, and he did because he could. You know what I mean?
Right, without getting caught.
Without getting
per
caught.
se. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, that'll time
Sorry.
will tell.
Yeah, this was a flashback.
So
moment.
episode 4, Revelations. Let's talk about Frank and his gun and what he's gonna do with this gun. I mean,
I think the first thing that we see about Frank is this is the first episode where he's actually taking a strong stance towards something greater than himself.
Yep.
He is now. I'm getting a gun. Like that's and he coincidentally makes replica guns. So that just kind of
Yeah,
lines
coincidentally.
up really easily. And he
Very convenient.
Yeah, I'm assuming he adds the firing pin or some mechanism because they're supposed to be hyper realistic. And just his push towards, no, this is what I'm going to do. I've lost my family. I've lost everything. And I don't think that it's Juliana that's motivating it. I don't think it's anything but pure vengeance. And I still don't think that he's fully swayed into with the mission and the resistance. I think that his goal is selfish
it's personal.
at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know that I agree that Juliana isn't in somewhat a motivation. But I definitely agree that he is not on anyone's side but his own.
For sure.
He's doing what he needs to do. And his poor little buddy Ed, I believe is his name,
Ed, yeah.
from the replica warehouse, just can't catch a break with him.
Well, Ed's a very loyal friend. It's probably he's too loyal for his own good, especially when we start to see Frank's intentions as being not necessarily the most noble or noble, depending on what side you're on, I guess.
And that's the interesting thing about it, because I really liked his insight or reasoning in the sense that if I just go kill the cop that took Laura and her kids from me, then they're just gonna throw another guy in the spot. It's not doing anything.
Yeah.
He's not just trying to get like an eye for an eye. He's saying, I want this whole thing to go away. I don't want killing Jews to be a thing people can just do.
Which is a reasonable.
Right. So
well, I mean, I think if you look at history, like any sort of big political assassin has had that same revelation in one way or another. It's.
Who are you trying to compare him to?
Well,
right now?
I think well, anyone, and I'm not saying it in any way endears him. I just mean that when he's killing someone who, because we as the audience have met the prince, right? And the prince is pretty cool in my books. Like he's he's the leader of an empire, so like there's that. But he has a heart for his people, unlike any of the other characters in power that we've seen.
Right.
He seems to, at least, right? But that doesn't matter. Frank wants to kill the prince because it represents the system to him. I mean, the same thing like Brutus and Caesar,
but
John Wilkes Booth.
Whether he likes it or not, doesn't the prince kind of represent the system?
Well, he does.
I mean,
but I think he's a naive version. I think just his entire desire to
his being Frank.
No, not Frank. I think Frank's decision is naive about how he's going about it. But I think the prince himself is naive for putting himself in a position where somebody like Frank. I'm sure there's more people out there Frank that have the desire to attack the prince.
To me, again, like we were the audience. We were privy to a lot of more information than maybe any one of these characters would be individually. But it seemed pretty obviously someone was going to take a shot at him. Like that wasn't. I wasn't really surprised. It was like something bad was going to happen because it became like a loaded gun. You know what I mean? And the prince wanted to go ahead. Like he got warnings. He still wanted to go ahead with it. It was just it's a perfect scenario for disaster. You know what I mean? Especially to have him be built up as this sort of maybe quasi benevolent power figure. It's
well, all I'm saying is when it comes to Frank's perspective, regardless of what the prince actually believes himself and stands for and what he wants to do, in Frank's eyes, or anybody's, which is why Frank's probably not the only person that wants to take a swing or a shot, all he represents is what they experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so Frank's experience is, they just killed my family because I couldn't tell them where my girlfriend is. I don't even, and I don't have any information on her. Like, it's not like I'm withholding information I have. I can't tell them anything, and they killed my family because we're Jewish, and they thought I would tell them,
Yeah, he's killing a symbol.
Right. And unfortunately for him, because we as an audience do have information, what he wants and what the prince wants actually probably align far more than Frank realizes. Because we see the prince talk about wanting to move peace. peace.
Right.
And
that's
all
actually
of his
what
generals,
the banner was
it's a peace and happiness.
Yeah, peace and happiness.
Yeah. And all of the generals, they talk about the generals all want a war cry. That's what they want the speech to be.
So it's sort of the irony. I think what you're saying is that the irony here is that in trying to disrupt the system, he's actually disrupted the peace that was there,
Right.
Or maybe if you go deeper than that, he is part of the, even though he didn't actually do anything, we learn at the end of the episode, he is undermining sort of the tentative peace between the Japanese states and the Great Reich, and maybe in a way that could lead to the undoing of the Japanese states, which was his initial intention. But I also don't think, especially when we're talking about relation to his family, they're having Jewish heritage and that being an issue, I don't think that that's a better alternative in any way, shape, or form. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. If the power shifts to the Great Reich, then you're going to be in the same situation.
I would say worse. I think.
Absolutely
with
worse.
a more active.
Because historically, in our reality or in the alternate reality that is the show, it wasn't the Japanese that decided that Jewish people should die in the masses first.
No,
you know what I mean? It was not them. So for him to think that that would be kind of the way out, or the way to change, I think was a little bit naive.
He's got tunnel vision in what's driving him.
I mean, he's obviously not thinking rationally.
I mean, if you're shot and you're still like, no, I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm still gonna do this. You're looking suspicious as can be. If you're throwing yourself away
at the end.
Yeah, no, I just love to talk about the fact that Frank. Okay, we can say whatever we want about him, but dude takes a bullet in the arm, right? Takes a full bullet in the arm. I mean, like I assume that it like missed the bone, or else that would have just splintered. But like he manages to just kind of go about his business at that point with a bullet in the arm. Yeah. And I mean, wouldn't you go into shock? I feel like
that's probably why he could. Yeah. Is the shock, because the shock is what keeps the pain. Adrenaline, I would say, and shock.
Sure, are what but shock doesn't last, the rest of the day. Shock lasts as long as your hormones are in that state. But I mean, to me, it's like you get shaky, right? You get. I mean, And
he held the gun with that arm, because when he was holding the gun, there was blood dripping down his hand. So you get shot in the arm, and you're like, "Nah, this is symbolism. Like, I'm gonna use this hand." You're like, "Dude, just left hand. It'll still probably be pretty accurate. At least this way."
No, it would not be anywhere near as accurate. But
as a shot in arm.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that having a having a wounded arm is not going to be nearly as accurate.
I mean, the reality of him in any way being able to shoot him under those circumstances, like, it's not gonna happen.
Just going in the crowd, I'm gonna get
I don't know if you have any experience shooting guns.
Not in the crowd.
I do. No, not in a crowd. No, I mean, in the proper, target shooting at, with both hands and no distractions, it's still really hard.
Yeah, you're good for like 20, 30 feet.
When you're not trained. I mean, even people that practice regularly, they're not. It is very hard to shoot somebody to a fatality or even hit them at all. I mean, we saw. I mean, he got shot in the arm. Like, if his buddy's trying to hold the gun. I mean, I know he wasn't trying to kill him. I think it just. I don't think he meant to do it. I don't think he was just trying to scare him.
No, absolutely.
But it goes to show you, that close, holding the gun straight at him, and he's still nicked his arm. Like, then that's it.
I just think that if he's gonna get shot, he's still gonna try to use that arm to hold the gun to assassinate somebody. Like, he's so driven to assassinate this guy, he gets shot in the arm, and his thing is, I'm not gonna put it in the hand that hasn't been shot. I'm gonna hold it in the arm that is wounded, and I mean, I couldn't even you lifting your arm, you've been shot in your arm.
Exactly.
Well, but that goes back to like the nick or something. I mean, I don't think it. Well, no, got him.
It was. I mean, if we look at the wound, it's not like a nick. So I mean, it clearly missed the bone, or else he wouldn't be able to like lift the arm the way that he did. So all the logistics of actually being able to
lift the gun like crazy high.
Well, he would need to, but he didn't actually get around to it.
That darn kid.
As we learned,
that's what I'm saying. So like that but it also may have been some of that other stuff too, where like maybe he physically couldn't do it, maybe he morally couldn't do it.
Sure.
I mean, because he's looking at this little kid.
He does decide not to.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely decided not to before he knew somebody else was gonna take a shot, or somebody else took a shot. Like, he had already decided no, and I think that the kid played a little bit into that, but I think the kid was just a reminder of kind of like what's really at stake, and kind of
I agree.
You know what I mean? More than it was like, I can't let this kid see me kill a man. Like,
not
I don't
everyone's
think
an enemy.
Right.
It was like the youth. It was the innocence. It was the innocence of that still sort of existed. I think under the guise of this tenuous peace, it's sort of like not, whether or not Frank actually could think this sort of macro in the moment, I don't know, but it's like, if the prince dies, all of a sudden stuff's going to go down, like innocent people, this kid perhaps, or many others like him, all of a sudden are at risk. And in his sort of blind rage, it's easy for Frank to forget that. But then when he's faced with it, and this kid sort of goes, "Oh, what's that? Is that a gun?" and like looks up at him, it's becomes emotionally relevant for him at that point in a different way.
I'd like to make a slight prediction, if we can do a prediction on it, because there's no basis of who shot this guy. Two shots in a crowd from a distance, and there was not a hint. There were no cutaways, no shots. I went back and scrolled through and see if the camera focused on anybody.
Well, let's save it. We'll go back to predictions.
There were two shooters.
I want to talk about, before we go to predictions, I want to talk about going back to Juliana and Joe and Lem, they go to his house.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, first of all, they get the one guy that I called albino last week. Because I didn't know how else to describe him. No, unfortunately,
I believe
because he's not, but he just
is he not? I mean,
I don't think so.
I thought that's what they called him in this. Did they not call? I thought they referred to him as the albino at one point in the show.
I'm under the impression, and I should probably fact check this, but I was under the impression that it was an actor with albinism, which I thought was very cool.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we should look into that, because I would love to know, actually, not just. And judging by appearance,
he risked himself as well.
Yeah, right. He helps them
with no benefit. Like for him, what's he going to gain?
He's still alive, so who knows what role he ends up playing or who he ends up being.
And
later on,
he'll come back for sure.
So they go to Lem and they work it out that they're going to go up to meet the man in the high castle.
Yeah.
To give him the film, because apparently Lem's the contact for Trudy, and he passes the films on. Lem passes the films on to the man in the high castle.
And I love Lem. I think as the first look into a resistance leader.
I did love Lem. I'll put it that way.
Well, I still
did you guys see that coming?
Which aspect?
When he takes him up there and they turn around and he's got 10 guys around him all shooting, holding guns.
I don't necessarily.
I loved it.
I can't say that I saw it coming. The thought that I did have is, now that these films are there, why do they have to take them directly to the man in the high castle? That was my thing, where I was like, shouldn't they just take the films? Which is ultimately what happened. But in the moment in that scene, no, that was a surprise for me, and it was pretty good
cool. Surprise. I liked it.
As soon as Joe realizes he's not coming, which is the lights flickered, and I was like, no, what's gonna happen? And then we see Lim and his buddies turn around and draw guns on him.
Because we already know that it's been potentially foreshadowed, that Joe could die because of his talk with the Fuhrer.
Yeah, and that's the first time he actually, John Smith showed
and
his
that's
true relation.
where he got the very specific directive to leave the film in the car or the truck, and to be basically willing to kill or be killed, or both.
Right.
For the man in the high castle. I mean, the Fuhrer is willing to give up Joe to also get the man in the high castle.
Right.
Which is a gamble.
And all Juliana wants is some freaking answers.
Yeah,
she's not. The more I watch this, she's actually not even really part of the resistance.
Yeah.
No.
She just has a lot of questions, and I feel like in episode 5 that becomes even clearer.
Right.
That she's just really looking for answers. Which I thought was interesting.
And I feel like Joe is too. I think that the thing is with Joe is his motives are still not clear. We still don't really know.
Right. So
he's very conflicted.
And he's almost exposed. And then he told, and so as we know, he was told not to bring the film, and he does, and it saves his life.
It saves his life, but he gives over the film, which misobeys his directives. So now we're kind of what's going to happen for Joe?
Well, I think the timing of that is essential, because we've seen that he has been wavering. Every time he talks to John Smith, he wavers. And the Heil Hitlers became more delayed at the end of the phone calls. The conversations had more time in between them when they actually touched base with him. He's getting a little bit, he's getting a little more free. And then when they have the conversation where he's talking to John, and John says, well, look, if you see the man in high castle at the expense of your own life, you need to kill him. And that's so he had this relation to this man because he knew his father knew him. He doesn't really, you could tell that he didn't really know his father very well, because he mentioned that in episode 3, I think. Yeah. That he didn't really know his father very well. So this is the only guy that he has a relation to. And this guy just said, well, you could, if you
could die, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you're expendable to me. So now for me, I was like, that just broke that one bond, that shred of bond that he had with
Heil Hitler kind of thing.
To the system.
And now his focus and the side of the war he's on is Juliana, and that's he's shifted. He's no resistance nor Nazi. He is Juliana is his focus, and keeping her safe is his focus.
Well,
I don't disagree. I feel like there's more twists and turns to be had in Joe's journey for sure. But yeah, I think that was sort of the first time at which it was just on a really fundamental basis, like, oh, he's not just going to be sort of this poster child for Nazis.
When I went to watch episode 5, I was on episode 4, on my Amazon Prime, and it actually says in the episode description something about Joe's falling for Juliana, and I thought that was interesting because we talked about it in predictions last week, but you can kind of see that there's like sort of a chemistry and
totally,
like, will they or won't they, or are they or aren't they, and because they never get close to kissing or any of that, but there's just sort of this like tension,
Oh, there's tension,
and it's one of those things where it's interesting to me because I feel like it's so subtle in the episode for them to have said that as like an outright, this is what's happening in the episode, was really kind of a shock to me.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I found it interesting because to me it makes sense, and I actually feel like after reading that I was like, okay, there's actually less tension than I thought. It's more just him falling for her, and he's making all of these because she's just like so focused on her sister. I think she's kind of like tunnel visioned in, which is why I also think she's not even part of the resistance. She's just kind of like Frank, like she's out for herself. Just her motives and what she's looking for is a very different thing than what Frank is looking for.
And she's already hurt Frank by focusing so much on herself and her family. At what cost? You saw what that did to Frank's family. Yeah,
she doesn't know.
She's being detrimental in her wake because of how ignorant she is in this world. Like you were in an occupied country. This is not somewhere that you can just be free-spirited and go about your own agenda. That's what the term occupation means. Like,
exactly.
It's no longer you're allowed.
You answer to a government power.
And so Lamel, I think that's his full name, Lem, Washington, he's the first powerful person of resistance. So it's nice to see that contrast because he's smart, driven. He knew that Joe was goose stepper, as he called him, from when he's in that cafe, because that's why he never made contact with him, because he saw him and he knew what had happened back in the town in episode 1, and he's like, no, Dantes don't mess up. And so it's nice to see that strong resistance leader to parallel John Smith.
It's interesting because I'm anxious to see how powerful he actually is in the resistance, and I wonder like when we'll actually get to see some of that, like how much clout he actually carries, because I can't tell
and how
much
big
just,
it really is or isn't.
Right. Well, we know that we don't know how. To me, it's not necessarily. I want to know how big it is, but I also want to know how interconnected it is. Because
that's what I mean.
Yeah,
big as in one big web versus like
organization.
Like, does the man in the high castle actually have some sort of organized resistance strategy, or is this just like
militia everywhere here and there?
Like, for example, like the attack in the previous episode on Obergruppenführer's life. In New York, like, is that something instigated by the man in the high castle, or is that a group of guys who managed to get a hold of some guns?
They're still checking into the breach.
Yeah, and they
still don't know where that's coming from.
And it seems like they sort of concluded their search and didn't find anyone. And Obergruppenführer was just like, that's not an option. Like, we
have to keep figuring this out. But there's no plan of action forward. Which I totally forgot to talk about with the marshal, because they didn't kill him.
Right, they didn't. Yeah.
So. I just, in checking my notes, they staged Juliana's death for him to find.
Right.
And so maybe that's why they didn't kill him. Like, they knew that he would come after them, and
that's a good point,
wanted
to solidify the death.
You know what I mean? But then also knowing that if the marshal's dead, somebody's going to come looking for him and then looking for them. So if they keep him alive, but make it kind of look like, I don't know, he needs to be off the trail for them, because she's not on his cards.
Well, because she can also report back. Like, he especially if he's going to get in touch with, because that actually is a good reason if you look at like why Joe might have decided to reveal himself as a Nazi agent and give Obergruppenführer Smith's name, is so that the marshal could report back and sort of say that this girl died, sort of.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So it saves Joe's life because he knows that the marshal and him are ultimately working for the same guys,
Right.
And then if the marshal's dead, somebody's going to come looking for him and then come looking for, who did it and all of that.
Right.
Whereas this way, like, the trail's clean. If the marshal goes and asks the Fuhrer about Joe, it's going to check out. And when he goes hunting after the girl, it checks out. She's dead. They made it very clear, kind of a thing. When in reality, they're both now just on to the next. And the Fuhrer doesn't know anything about this Juliana girl. Yeah. Or the Trudy girl, right? Well, maybe he knows about Trudy just because of the resistance stuff. But, but I saw my notes and I just wanted to go back to that because I think maybe that's why they kept the marshal alive.
It could be,
But also, That's nuts. I mean, the you think about just how everything had to come together and going and getting the body out of the cave and all of that so that it looked real and like there was a person in the car.
Yeah, and they did it pretty darn quick. I mean,
right?
We staged a murder in like under a half hour and a half.
Exactly.
Like, yes,
the length of time it took, the marshal to wake back up from the blow to the head.
Don't you think that Juliana should be a little concerned as to why Joe is so good at this? He's like, we're going to stage a murder. We're going to get a car down there. We're going to hijack that thing. We're going to drive down the road, burn it, and grab that body from the cave.
She's so easy going. She's like,
She's like, that's great. Yeah, wow, this guy's a go-getter. I think I'm falling for him.
Yeah.
Now we know why.
Yeah, exactly.
I would be smitten. I'm like, wow, this guy saved me.
We haven't seen Frank stage a murder like that yet.
No, we haven't.
Step it up, Frank.
All we see Frank do is like go see Juliana's mom.
Right.
I mean,
what
and
a
then
good guy though, right? He's gonna go visit the mom.
That's important,
touch
right?
base.
Yeah,
that is crucial.
Nice. Yeah.
Well, let's go on to predictions.
That sounds
Let's
good.
go on to predictions.
I would like to predict on the shooter. Okay, let's get our little flow going.
A light show.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV.
Sorry, I just love the light show.
It's good.
The prediction gods will smite you for trying to start without them.
I just want to really go into who fired the shots. 2 shots into the chest of the prince, and in my mind, who has the most to gain from this would be the Nazis.
Yeah.
I think that the Nazis orchestrated it from a really high level, and they had the prince shot because he was the only sense of, objection to the let's have a war cry, let's fully keep this in embattlement, and instead he's the one sense of no, we can have peace. And so I think total Nazi move, easiest thing for them to do if they take the prince out is going to get a cry of safety that they need protection. If the prince can be shot, then anybody can be shot.
Right.
More soldiers, more reason for occupation.
Yeah.
Just fits in my mind.
I'm wondering, God, I really wonder how many people knew that this was going to happen, because I feel like this is more of a conspiracy. I feel like there's more
Really?
characters.
You don't think it's an individual? You think that this is... I mean, obviously
like
an individual made the,
Sure.
did the dirty work, but...
Unless there were 2 shooters.
Yeah.
Which is another prediction.
Well, and it's how many people maybe had a gun and just like that was the first one to make the shot, because we know that Frank had the gun and didn't actually take the shot. I think that
2 separate guys.
Yeah, just everyone just kind of and like
they see each other in the crowd.
Oh,
hey, Joe.
Oh, what's up? How you doing? How's the wife? I think that the killing the prince is a conspiracy. I think that the Nazis, or at least some sort of Nazi organization, is involved. I don't think it's just an individual. I also would like to predict that the marshal doesn't think Juliana's dead. Just it seems to
doesn't think. Okay.
Like doesn't think that she's dead just
See,
because.
My prediction would be that
intelligent.
he discovers that she's not. That something tips him off to look again.
Yeah.
That's a very likely possibility, I think, but for me it's really how far I suspend my disbelief, because for me, if I'm the marshal and I see what's I think a man's body, but like you see like
it's the woman that was tortured in the cave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you see a body in a car, right? To me, it's like, why is this car so conveniently ablaze right now? It's not really
And already charred.
It's if someone wraps a car around a tree, it doesn't just then combust and then burn. It looked like a gas fire.
It might have back then, though.
Yeah.
It might have. That's the thing.
I mean,
I don't know.
But
like 1960s
I mean, I'm not trying
cars.
to. Right. I mean, and I think you are obviously onto something as well. But I also think. I mean, again, you did this in what, like an hour, or you know what I mean?
Sure.
So
Probably
it's not like they had all this gas. It's not like they had all this time to get resources. I mean, I feel like almost all the time that they had to go towards like getting the body.
Sure.
But I do like the prediction that storyline isn't over.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that storyline's not over, and I think that we're going to see the marshal. I think that we're going to see the marshal. I think I'd like to predict that we're going to see him not just in Cannon City. I have
The marshal, okay.
Yeah, okay. I have a feeling he's gonna either maybe he's still on Juliana's trail or something else is going on.
Well, speaking of capturing Juliana, I think the Japanese are going to capture Frank because of the list that he had to write his name down when he got the antique bullets. Because where are you gonna get
Oh my
bullets so
gosh,
often?
yes.
And that guy wrote his name down
And
for
he made
liability
him,
on himself.
yes.
Well, what's interesting, I'm wondering.
Or if he's gonna get turned in.
Sure. Okay, I think that he might get
By
turned
the
in.
guy.
I'm interested because those are a very specific type of bullet, as we find out in the episode.
Yeah, he only could buy 3.
Yeah, he can only buy 3, but it's also like, what are the chances that the bullet that killed the prince is that same kind of bullet?
Unless that guy had more.
Yeah, well, unless that guy had more.
That
but,
guy's
like,
just selling bullets off that day.
Well, no, I mean,
But
I
what was
thought
that
he's.
kind of gun?
I
That
thought,
kind of gun was a specific. It was like
I
a
thought
Colt. It was like a
he
Colt 45.
said he
or
only
something.
had 3 bullets.
Oh, okay.
He
Right.
bought all the bullets that he could.
Yeah.
Right.
Was my understanding.
But
for the gun.
I feel like that might be another reason why Frank, if he does get caught, maybe gets off the hook, is because they can look and then they say like, oh, well, these are this kind of bullet. This is like this caliber for this gun.
Right.
But the bullets that killed the prince are
not.
Yeah, there's this other caliber of bullet.
I feel like it's got to be a third strike for him, though.
So I'm gonna predict. I'm gonna
Found your
predict.
bullets, dude.
Last prediction, and then we'll move on. Last prediction. I'm gonna predict that just to kind of play devil's advocate, that it was an inside job.
Oh, okay.
Because he does want peace, and they don't want peace, and so they need to get somebody to be the symbol that stands for and is going to either just be a puppet and do what they say, or has the same belief that they do to move into war, to try to go into war against the Reich and the natural zone, the neutral zone, versus that it was an inside job because they're really the only ones that know he's going to go say peace.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
Yeah, the Nazis and Japanese.
So just throwing that out there.
Okay.
And I guess any last thoughts or remarks?
Yeah, I mean, the final thought I have to say is we really got into the assassination. We got into what was happening, but we didn't really discuss what was happening behind the assassination with Rudolph and Tagome with the microfilm.
There's something going on there. Yeah, Rudolph has some sort of plans. I saw like a molecular diagram on this microfilm that he wasn't able to get into the pocket of his contact.
Yeah.
He's trying to get this film into the pocket of this guy, and he wasn't able to do it because the assassination interrupted it. I have a feeling that one more prediction, just in the spirit of predictions. I think Tagome knows who took the shots. I don't necessarily think that he is part of that conspiracy, but I think that he knows who is.
Yeah.
If he's not. Does that make sense? Like, I think that he knows.
Well, yeah, he's the trade minister.
Right. I don't think that he was entirely surprised.
Well, my final thought on the overall Tagome Rudolph is just that I like the symbolism and how much of an overarch film has in this
That is true.
Yes.
universe.
It's very interesting.
Where microfilm, a film roll, like the cinema, like everything they're doing is around footage, video, it's press, and nobody knows what happens. It's nothing. Even after he got shot, nobody's aware immediately of what happened. People are like, "What's going on? Why is the city shut?"
And that goes to show the time of, the time the book was written, just the time in the world that this takes place.
And the power of media, power of press is just incredible.
True. Because this is
Especially now, because they didn't have it we do now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
exactly like the entire sort of, I guess, blossoming of the media never really happened in this context. Because I mean, you talk about when you get into especially like ad age sort of stuff, where it becomes like the 1960s, 1970s was a huge growth of advertisement media.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they didn't have that, which I think is why this film's, because people don't really know what films are. They don't really they don't even have
propaganda.
TVs
That's all
yet.
they
You know what I
have.
mean? They're watching these on projectors, and anyway, yeah.
Very cool.
So,
Very cool.
well-
That is a good observation too. There are no TVs.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, I don't think they're around yet.
Yeah, no, I think it's just radio.
They were
So-
watching. No, they were. Joe was in his hotel room watching the game show.
That
what's
is true.
What's our game? Like, what's our favorite game? It was Dragnet, I think, is what people said.
But-
I take it back.
But Frank doesn't have a TV.
Yes.
You know, there's not
Oh, yeah, people
it's
don't
not
just own
like
them.
TVs are still it's right at that point in time where TVs
I'm gonna have to go
are,
back and look at that.
Yeah, it was great.
Actually, okay.
'cause
Well,
I definitely remember seeing something about the Prince on a TV somewhere. Either it was like a TV store or something. I feel like I remember seeing
Okay.
like old timey.
I'm gonna have to go back and check.
Because this is about that time,
Yeah,
right? This sort of
50s,
puts the
yeah, that
show.
both were
50.
TVs.
Oh, I guess 50.
50s,
Yeah,
60s.
this is 50.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
black and white.
Okay.
It's
Fair
not-
enough. Fair enough.
No LG, no.
Fair enough.
They're still
Fair
waiting.
enough.
They're still waiting on it.
Well, thank you guys for joining me as always. We are so excited to do the show. So have a great night. Where can we find you one last time?
You can find me all over the internet at Keith W. Black, and if you want to discuss further, go ahead and write in the comments and all that, and we'll get back to you.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Tbolt or on Instagram at Tbolt. Thank you guys very much, and shoot me a tweet and let me know what you think of this episode. Can't wait to come back for more.
Thank you guys so
you.
much.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.